Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. With the 2024 presidential race now set between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, the general election is officially underway. And this will be the first presidential election in Florida since we lost our status as a swing state. Make no mistake about it, Florida is a red state, and the voter registration numbers tell the story. Republicans now have an advantage of more than 800,000 registered voters. In 2012, when Obama won the state, the Dems had a lead of nearly 600,000 registered voters. That means in 12 years, we have seen a nearly 1.5 million voter swing in favor of Republicans. And Miami-Dade County, once a Democratic stronghold, is slipping away as well. This week, I spoke to the Florida Democratic Party Chair, Nikki Fried, about the state of the Democratic Party. Chairwoman Nikki Fried, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. I want to start by, now that we sort of understand the contours of what this presidential election is going to be, it's a repeat of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. There was an interesting story in the Washington Post talking about how Biden is going to be competing in 8 swing states. And by my math, I don't see Florida as one of those swing states. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina. Florida's a red state now, isn't it?
No, it's not a red state. So first of all, thank you for having me on the show. No, Florida right now, and has consistently been one of those still battleground states, which is what the president has been talking about as he travels the country, including all of the surrogates across the nation, knowing that Florida has to be in play. Because if you're going to take back democracy for the whole country and make sure that it's preserved, you got to come to the belly of the beast, which is here in the state of Florida. And so the conversations that we are having with all of our national parties is, first of all, Florida is an underorganized, voter-suppressed state. And so when you have a Democratic Party who's able to overcome all of those issues, which is what we are working on last year and this year, it puts Florida in play, especially when you've seen how extreme the Republicans have been in this state, taking us to a 6-week abortion ban, having right now the #1 issue on everybody's mind is property insurance. And we're just ending legislative session. And once again, the Republicans have done nothing to fix this. So with all of these issues that are surrounding Florida for the 2024 cycle, Florida is in play. We are considered one of our battleground states, and we are ready to take back this state and to make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are put back in the White House.
I understand why you need to say that, but the numbers don't support it. I mean, you are currently, voter registration numbers, Republicans are outpacing Democrats by more than 800,000. A reminder, when the last time a Democrat won the state of Florida, Barack Obama in 2012, Democrats had a 600,000 voter registration advantage. So that's more than 1.5 million voter registration advantage swing towards the Republicans. And I don't see any signs that that gap is closing or moving in the right direction for Democrats.
Well, thank you so much for asking this question. So there's really a misunderstanding of what's happening with the voter registration numbers. That last year alone, based on a Republican law that went into place last year, that the supervisor of elections all across the entire state have to go through the rolls every single year, cleaning them up, and then changing the way that they've defined an active and inactive voter. So last year alone, Democrats had over 1 million of our voters moved into the inactive column. And that combination of a few things. And first of all, because of the economy where we are today, so many more Democrats are going from rental to a rental, especially in Miami-Dade County, and seeing that they can't live in their normal, rental apartments, so they're moving. And so if they haven't changed their address, they're going to get onto the inactive list. Those people can still vote. So definitely a message to anybody who's listening and watching this, go onto the supervisor elections website, check out your active status, making sure that you've changed your voter registration regarding your address, make sure you re-enlisted and vote by mail. And so when you add back in that inactive list, we're pretty par. And even last year.
Wait a second. You can't just add back in. As you said, a voter has to take some affirmative steps. And I know that part of...
No. So they can
if
still
they changed
vote.
Addresses, they're going to show.
Can still vote. They can still vote. So it just means that when they become inactive, it means that they're not going to get communication from myself, from the party, from the supervisor of elections, from the candidates. But if they go in on day of elections or even early voting, they are still eligible to vote. But if they don't vote in this cycle, next time they become, off the rolls completely.
Let me just jump in, because I do want to ask you, back in August, you did a Take Back Florida tour, is I think what you called it. You had pledged to spend $1 million on voter registration efforts. How much of that $1 million has been spent? And in talking to some local folks, I know that there was a pledge to put some of that money, $1 million, into local Democratic parties, local counterparties. Dade County says they've never received any of that money. I don't know if that's true or not, but can you tell me how much you've actually spent of that $1 million and what results you have to show for it?
Yes, let's take first of all a step backwards. Look at where I walked into after a disastrous November 2022. After that, and I was running for chair, people kept asking me, why in the world would you jump onto the Titanic after it hit the iceberg? And I believe so much in our state, born and raised in Miami, I love our state. And so when I came in and seeing that the party itself had not been doing voter registration inside the party for quite a few cycles. So one part of being able to register new voters is you have to make sure that the branding is right and that the people are trusting the Democratic Party. And so when I first came in, a big part of the first part of the year was rebranding, regaining that trust, making sure that we had the party apparatus that was ready to put the work on the ground. And so over the course of the year, we reinvigorated our local parties. Part of that Take Back Florida tour, we had over thousands of Democrats all across the state that were showing up to events. We hired a new voter registration director last year. And as you know, putting these programs into place takes some time. And so we did this, and then we also asked all of our statewide caucuses, as well as our local parties, to submit proposals to us. And so based on those proposals, we actually put money onto the ground into our local parties, reinvigorating the volunteer base. And we have put in a substantial amount in Dade County. And in fact, just this month, we are putting another substantial amount on the ground in Miami-Dade County.
But I think the very issue, though, that you're raising, which is years of neglect by the Democratic Party in terms of doing voter registration, I understand the goal of the Democratic Party to be relevant again in Florida statewide elections, but it's not realistic to think that you could do it this year. Isn't this really a 3, 4, 5, 10-year project at this point to be competitive again, so that in 2024, Florida won't be competitive?
No, I mean, look at what the trend is happening all over the state. In 2023, we flipped Jacksonville, the first female mayor that we have had in Jacksonville. No one thought that the Democrats were going to take that. And look what just happened a couple of weeks ago. We flipped a seat in House District 35, which is the Orlando area, that had gone to the Republicans in the cycle beforehand. Everybody thought that was going to be impossible. We leaned in. We did the work. Even down in Dade County last year, we had a special election in House District 118, a 65% plus Cuban district that Ron DeSantis had won by 34 points. We lost it by 30. And we saw a tremendous swing, because when the Democrats are organized, when we're on the ground talking about the issues that are important to the people, having great candidates, putting the work in it, and talking to all the voters, not only are Democrats coming out, but we're also seeing a tremendous swing in our independents. And so the trend has been that not only are we doing the work inside of the party apparatus, we're building a bigger tent, making sure that the independents understand that the Democrats are the ones who are going to continue to stand up.
Let me just ask this, because I wanted to get to, you removed 3 county party chairs across the state, or suspended them, including the Democratic chair here in Miami-Dade County, Robert Dempster. Why did you remove Mr. Dempster?
For all of these reasons, Jim. We had to get, everything that we have been doing this past year, leaning into our parties, trying to rebrand. And look, if things haven't been working, people elected me to make bold decisions and bold leadership. And sometimes that means making really hard decisions for what's best for the state and what's best for the party, because ultimately, when Florida Democrats lose, it's the people that lose. And so I had to make a decisive decision on that. We had to rebuild Miami-Dade County to make sure that we are still blue. You know, Dade County has only gone red twice here in the state of Florida. It has been continuously a blue county.
Well, let me just give you the numbers on that. In 2016, Hillary Clinton came out of Miami-Dade County with a net win of 300,000 votes. In 2020, Joe Biden won Miami-Dade County by only 85,000 votes. I think a big part of this is a lack of voter outreach to Hispanic voters, and there is a very real possibility that in this presidential election cycle, Donald Trump could win Dade County. Are you concerned by that?
I know that, but this is exactly why we had to make some changes on the ground, because those trends were going in the wrong direction. And if I didn't come in and make a very decisive, very bold decision saying, look, this is not working. We need new leadership. We need new direction. And to your point, it's because we haven't been going into these communities. We haven't been having the hard conversations and regaining the trust of so many in Miami-Dade County. And so I know that now that we are putting in the work, we have our clubs and our caucuses, and we're getting candidates, and we are going to be continuously showing back up year round in this county and across the entire state. And that is why I know that when we put in the work, we get our volunteers, we get the energy, we talk about the messages, again, that are important to the people of our state. Property insurance is the #1 issue for Florida's voters. When we talk about those issues, I have no doubt in my mind that Miami-Dade County will continue to stay blue, but we got to put in the work.
Nikki Fried, I appreciate your coming on. We're going to talk more, I'm sure, between now and Election Day in November, and we should spend some time talking more specifically about what the legislature did this year. Maybe we can do that in the weeks ahead, especially on reproductive rights and those issues. So, Nikki Fried, thank you very much for your time. When we come back, we will talk to the head of the group looking to replace the teachers union here in Miami-Dade and its ties to a far-right group financing their effort. Stay with us. Welcome back. Last year, the Republican-controlled legislature passed a law designed to weaken and undermine unions across the state. But their main target was the teachers union in Miami-Dade, the United Teachers of Dade. The law, which, by the way, was exempted for all the unions that supported Governor Ron DeSantis, made it harder for unions to collect dues, while at the same time requiring the unions to increase the percentage of dues-paying members from 50% to 60%. Any union that failed to meet the 60% threshold would face elimination. The United Teachers of Dade fell just short of that 60% mark and is now facing a challenge to its existence. A competing group, the Miami-Dade Education Coalition, is going to challenge the United Teachers of Dade in an election in the coming weeks about who should represent teachers. Joining me this morning is Brent Urbanik, a Miami-Dade teacher and president of the Miami-Dade Education Coalition. Did I butcher your last name? Urbanik.
You did. It's Urbanik.
It's
you did
Urbanik.
Very well, though. Yes.
All right.
You did very well.
I apologize for that. But all right. So you, in order to qualify for this election against the United Teachers of Dade, need to collect about, what is it, about 2,300 signatures or so?
About 10% of the bargaining unit.
So it's about 2,300.
About 2,300, yes.
And how many cards have you collected so far?
Over 2,400 and counting.
All right.
And cards come in all the time.
And so when are you going to deliver those? Because the way this works, and it's a little technical, once you get the cards, you have to submit them to the PERC, which is the governing board over unions in the state of Florida, in Tallahassee, and they have to verify the signatures. When are you expecting to do that?
We're going to go ahead and hand them in on Monday. That's our planned date. And the reason being is that we're not sure when PERC is going to call the election, and we don't want to be in the midst of collecting, and they call the election, and then, you know, they say, oh, well, you should already submitted your card. So we're just going to go ahead and hand them in now. All right.
So tell me why you think Miami-Dade Education Coalition would better serve teachers than the United Teachers of Dade.
Well, because UTD has quite an extensive history of just failing the bargaining unit in general. They've not been able to bargain decent salaries for us. You know, our salary schedule is behind that of Monroe and Broward. There has been all kinds of, interesting election shenanigans that have happened when people have tried to effectively challenge the ruling party in UTD. And overall, we feel like in a lot of ways that the union is in the pocket of the district. And even in this whole process, the district has in a lot of ways been kind of helpful to UTD and against us. We were originally able to send emails to people through the district email, and they blocked that. And then we were obviously not able to in any way speak on behalf of our organization at any staff meetings or anything like that. And
but that generally, though, that's not specific to you. Any group can't just walk into a school and make a presentation.
Well, it seems like all these groups that do have these business ties to MDCPS, we get emails from different groups all the time. And then obviously whenever there is some type of presentation that they would have to make in the staff meetings or anything like that, they may not be able to do it in any long format, but nonetheless, they do have a platform far greater than anything we've been afforded.
All right, I want to get to the elephant that's sort of in the room, which is that there was this bill in Tallahassee that was pushed for, in fact, one of the individuals from the Freedom Foundation, which is a right-wing conservative group that has made its mission to destroy government sector unions across the country. They've been very active in that all across the U.S. They helped write the bill that puts you in the position you are now. And the Freedom Foundation is bankrolling you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How much money have they spent so far to help you try to take out United Teachers of Dade?
That number I do not have. But it's important to understand the relationship as being purely strategic. So can I make a military comparison?
Sure.
Imagine there's a rebel group that's dealing with an entrenched aristocracy, okay? And the rebel group really just has torches and pitchforks. And then another group comes along and says, hey, we will bankroll you to have weapons that will actually make you competitive.
And why do you think they're doing that, though? Why do you think they're bankrolling you to take out the United Teachers of Dade?
Because Freedom Foundation isn't necessarily anti-union. They're anti-partisanship in unions. You don't see them going after like the Las Vegas teachers union. I can't remember. I think it's Clark County, Nevada. You don't see them attacking them. They disaffiliated from their state and national organizations. And it's really the partisan positions that are taken by public sector unions that the Freedom Foundation stands against. And we at MDEC, we agree with that. We don't think that union dues should be funneled into any particular party. And that's why MDEC is a non-partisan union. We've written it into our Constitution and bylaws.
All right, you pointed out the issue of salaries. You don't think that teachers, look, I think we could all appreciate if teachers would receive more money, but you don't think the union has done enough in that regard?
No, I do not.
What is your salary?
My salary is probably about in the 60s, depending on how much I work as far as tutoring after school and what kind of clubs I take. But it's by no means close to what the United Way has said is a minimal acceptable salary for someone who lives in this county. They put that number in the 70s. Most teachers don't make that. And it's interesting because the United Way, works with MDCPS and trying to get donations from us teachers to help the organization, and their own standard for a salary most teachers don't make.
You say that the United Teachers of Dade hasn't done anything. What about the property tax referendum that was used to help give you additional money?
That property tax referendum, it originated with some of our own people who support MDEC pushing for that, and then UTD adopted it.
And UTD financed that effort, right?
As far as how much they finance, I can't speak to that.
And what about, and my understanding is that the United Teachers of Dade, the American Federation of Teachers, another group that you say you would withdraw from, the National Education Association, another group that you say you would withdraw from, all contributed both in 2018 and I think that, AFT contributed in 2022 to get that approved and renewed. And as a result, there's going to be about $400 million extra dollars that wouldn't be going to teachers that is now going to teachers. So when you say UTD hasn't done enough for teachers, how do you reconcile that? I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I pulled some of the pay records for you, knowing you were coming in. In the last 5 years, you've received more than $50,000 as a result of the money that UTD was able to get through this referendum passed so that you could benefit. Last year, you received an additional $14,041.
So $14,041 still is far behind what the step raises that we were originally meant to get should have gotten us. And the negotiating away of our step raises was something that, for a lot of people, was a deal breaker.
Who established that the step increases at school districts were going to go away? It was the legislature.
But the legislator put in a grandfather clause.
But they said that salaries have to be based on merit. This was the Republican move to put merit into salary structure, right? So as a result, that they couldn't do a step structure. But instead, through this referendum we talked about that's bringing $400 million into teachers' pockets over the next 4 years, that is a step. They basically put a step system in there. You get a little extra because of your seniority than somebody who has fewer years. Am I correct?
It's a misrepresentation of the way that the bill is written. That merit pay could have been, you can just give an extra $1. There was no reason for them to get rid of the steps. And in fact, when UTD did negotiate away the steps,
is there a single school district in the state?
That way.
Is there a single school district in the state that didn't do away with the steps because of the legislature?
They followed the lead of UTD because initially,
so every other school district, every school district in the state got it wrong, according to you.
Well, every school district in the state ends up having the advantage of the fact that the FEA and the NEA and their local unions work together and trying to entrench their own power positions to ensure that the money base stays with them. And this is something that we at MDEC are trying to fight. We want to be a local-only union. We want to only have our dues stay with us and be nonpartisan, because in a nonpartisan union, you're not going to have a struggle to get to 60%.
Why do you think the bill that was written that put you in the position you are now exempted all of the unions that supported the governor? Don't you see that this was a politically designed bill? In other words, Tallahassee didn't have a problem with unions playing politics as long as the politics were in favor of the governor and Republicans, which is why they exempted police unions, firefighter unions, corrections unions. All the unions that had endorsed DeSantis got exempted from this bill. So Republican unions are good. It's the unions that favor Democrats that are bad?
In some of those unions, some of them do take nonpartisan positions. I can't speak to how many, but they do. Okay? And I'm not here as a representative of the Republican Party. I'm here to represent teachers, and I'm here to try to advocate for us to get a better union that can negotiate for things like better benefits, wages, and working conditions, and stay out of the partisan politics that a lot of the unions get into, especially the parent unions.
You don't think you're being used by Freedom Foundation?
No, I think I'm using them.
You're using them. But you don't know how much they've spent, you said.
No.
I mean, they're paying for all the mailings. You have canvassers going door to door. They're paying for all of that. They pay for all your legal expenses.
Yeah, and so how else were we supposed to do it when we don't get access to even talk to our own bargaining unit members in school? How
well,
are we
if there was
to do that?
if there was so much discomfort with UTD, you would think there would be a groundswell from all of the schools, and yet you've collected about 2,400 signatures.
And counting.
UTD has turned in more than 11,000.
Well, of course. You have to think of the conditions they were able to collect those in. They could speak at a staff meeting. They can instill misinformation and fear in people.
Do you have evidence of misinformation that they've given?
Of course. They call us a front group or an AstroTurf organization.
But the definition of AstroTurf is a group that is funded by outside groups. You are the definition of an AstroTurf organization, aren't you?
No, we're not, because it's still grassroots when plain teachers like myself with no political experience or aspirations put together an organization to try to advocate for better benefits, wages, and working conditions. And if we are offered some better weapons to make a military comparison, to give us a shot, we're going to do this. This is not our first time trying this. We tried this 20 years ago under the Teachers' Rights Advocacy Coalition, and it didn't work because we are outgunned by the enormous power and money that UTD has access to by FEA, NEA, and the district that supports them.
Brent, I'm sure we're going to have more of this conversation as the election eventually comes about. We don't have a date yet for it, but it'll probably be in the next couple of months, I would guess.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll be talking more.
I really appreciate it.
We'll be right back after the break. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Well, that's all the time we have. We'll be back again next week. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.